And with that, we begin.
Well, it's always got to be about the Mets, baby. Love the Mets. Got to laugh about the Mets.
And there's your New York Mets update.
New York Mets update. Still first in the East, top 5 in baseball, basically elite.
Yeah,
I don't know what else
swept the Phillies.
Swept the Phillies. God, all my homies hate the Philadelphia Phillies. It was a good weekend, man. Rangers won in Game 7. Mets swept the Phillies. Red Bull 4-1 against DC. Who? DCU, bro. DCU.
Really got him there.
Liverpool lost the Champions League final. Life was good this weekend, let me tell you. And I didn't have to work on Monday.
Wow.
Life is really good.
Probably the best weekend you've ever had.
It honestly, top five. How was your weekend, Connor? How you doing?
It was good. It was nice to get a break from work, and also enjoyed watching Liverpool lose, but it was a really boring game.
It was awful. It was so bad.
We had to wait 30 extra minutes for it to be that bad.
Yep. Luckily, on the Designated Players podcast, we talk about leagues that are exciting with golazos, like MLS and the New York Red Bulls. If you haven't seen our TikTok, go check it out. We're back, baby. Today's episode is gonna be really fun. A little bit of a headlines episode. Lots of big news coming this week, and that we need to talk about. We're gonna start with something that broke this morning. Miguel Angel Ramirez, after 16 games in charge, out in Charlotte. We're gonna talk about what that means for Charlotte. Some trends that actually we were talking about earlier in the season. Bring those back because those will be interesting. We'll jump back up. Ezequiel Barco starts bad-mouthing MLS after being semi-decent at River Plate, thinking he's all big and tough. We're going to break down why he's an idiot and why anybody who plays at Atlanta or supports Atlanta sucks.
Yeah, we know what was going on there.
Where is MLS globally, ranking-wise amongst the top leagues in the world? We had a goal back 7 years ago that by this year we would be top 5 in the world. Can't say we're there yet, but let's find out where we are and what we need to do to get there. And lastly, rumor has it that MLS and Liga MX teams are going to get some invites to Copa Libertadores, the very well touted South American, basically the South American Champions League. Talk about what it means and if we should do it, and how well we would do there, and what it means if we do well there. So before we do any of that, as we always do, it is Scarf of the Week time. Connor, what do you got? We'll let you go first.
Well, after you insulted me last week talking about my lack of scarves, I decided to bring out one that I haven't worn in a little while. Got the good old Houston Dynamo out here.
That's so underused. I would have thought it was new if you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's just I've been trying to go with the themes, but there just hasn't been enough Houston Dynamo going on this season.
So I was told that I ordered 2 mystery scarves because there was a sale, and Martin knows how to get to me. You put a sale on mystery scarves, I'm going to give you money. And they told me they shipped on Sunday, but they still aren't here. So I broke out a scarf to show some congratulations to the best team in Spain, a la Madrid. I bring this out for my buddy Miguel, who I know is listening, and if not, I'm going to clip this and send it to him so he has to listen. He's a big Barcelona fan, so have to rub it in because Liverpool, my rivals, didn't win, or Real Madrid, his rivals, did. So life is good. Okay, let's dive into it. It is the news of the day. Miguel Angel Ramirez, after just 16 games, has been relieved of his duties from Charlotte FC, an expansion side. Now, to give you some context, Charlotte FC is 2 points out of a playoff spot right now, has one of the best identities I've seen from an expansion team at this point in their existence of all time. And from what I've been reading, the majority of the players enjoyed the way that he coached. The owner, David Tepper, has stepped in and said, you can go and your entire staff can go. See ya. Don't want you here. He cleaned house, not even halfway through the season. Your initial reaction to when this happened? Give me your thoughts.
Is it fair to say dumb? What's going on? I don't understand this in the slightest. Obviously, what we've learned with the Losada firing is likely we will find out more details into actually what is going on a little bit later on. But right now, it's like, what in the world? You couldn't tell me that the Charlotte coach was going to get fired before the Chicago coach right now. Like, Charlotte have looked anything but bad this season, with the exception of maybe like the first game of the season, which was their first game in history. So obviously, you get a pass on that. Charlotte, obviously 8 losses on the season. Not going to say that they're like the greatest expansion team of all time, but to be comfortably in the playoff chase at this point in the season, why in the world did you shake it up? Like, it does not make any sense. I don't understand why they did it. And they're really risking shaking things up, especially if, like you said, if a lot of the players were happy with the way things were going, and I can completely understand why they would feel that way. Now you're going to risk potentially bringing in someone new who could do the opposite and lose the locker room, and then the results start to tank. So I can't wrap my head around this at all.
I'm completely with you. So just some more stats to make this even crazier of a decision. Since 2010, there have been 13 expansion teams in MLS. Of those 13, the 16 points that they have gained through 14 matches is the 6th most at this stage of the inaugural campaign. They're bang average for an expansion team, which is very, very good, right? You're for a team that came in, basically put together a roster of MLS veterans, a few internationals, and that's a bad Brant Bronico as the center single pivot. This man made them a relatively good MLS side. From what I'm reading, or rather what I have read, the driving force was a certain designated player has said he refused to play for Charlotte anymore after the June international break if it says Cornetta, but if Miguel Angel Ramirez was still in charge. That leaves you Jordi Alcivar, who's been playing every single game and playing very well. Karol Swiderski, who's, I mean, I think he has to be the one, because the other one is Kamil Jozwiak. He's been here for 3 weeks. There's no shot. There's no shot. Unless. But the front office was extremely quiet about it. I'm not gonna comment on things where some of the quotes that they had. There's not much point to speculate. We're gonna leave everybody in the dark. I don't want to go into details. It's not gonna help anybody. Difficult to explain, blah, 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 blah. End of the day, we had no choice. That's garbage. You don't take a team who is back to your awful front office decisions from day one, by the way. Let me see if I can find that tweet really quick. But I was sorry, while we have this dead air here, what I was looking for is there was a tweet that basically laid out what their first 6 months of the front office moves for Charlotte so far this sorry, I'm trying to speak and read at the same time. so far what their front office has looked like over the last 6 months. Basically, their sporting director or the president of the club had left. I need to start favoriting these tweets so I can just look back as soon as I can.
You got to bookmark them.
Yeah. Which means there's only one left. This one. It's always the last one that I look for too. Nope. Okay, never mind. Can't find it. But basically, it was like the whole front office. We'll just cut that part out.
Yeah.
The whole front office has been basically revamped. I'm pretty sure it was the president, the sporting director, and now the coach has been sacked. Their entire coaching staff has been sacked in 6 months of a team that was put together with bubble gum and duct tape, thrown onto the field and said, "Go make a result." The fans are stuck behind him. They like the coach, and he was doing well. He was doing well with a team that he didn't have a lot to work with. You finally give him some designated players to work for or work with. Evidently, that you didn't bring him in on those decisions because one of them hates him. This is an awful, awful look. If you are, so let me say, if you are looking at this as a neutral, just somebody who doesn't even follow the league, but just sees this, what do you think?
What's the right word? It's like on the tip of my tongue. It's dysfunctional organization. It's the first thing that comes to my head right now. I'm also, it's ringing a lot of bells of like Watford in the Prem. It's like these situations where the coach just doesn't even get a chance and is already walking out the door. Going in one way, it doesn't even stop. Can't put down his bag. He's already walking right back out the door again. There's no way you're going to be able to be successful if you can't hold any consistency, whether that's the coach or the front office. Look at the model team for this league in the Seattle Sounders. They've had 2 coaches in their history. I mean, you want to talk about consistency, that's a team that is consistent and is consistently good. So I just don't understand why. I mean, to answer your question, from a neutral fan perspective, I would look at it and I would say, I would probably just think like, oh, is this like the level of dysfunction that all MLS teams have? Like it is, I don't know, it's, you know what, I'm not putting that well. I don't know if I can provide a perspective from a neutral fan like standpoint.
So early on, we were talking about Charlotte as just kind of as a team and what they were going to do. We were going to talk about what happens because remember, he came in and he was talking garbage about this entire roster. You know, I can't work magic. I'm not Harry Potter. We're screwed. We're in trouble. Nobody's giving me stuff, right? All this stuff. So we went and we looked at expansion coaches who lasted less than a year. Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, FCC was one of them.
FCC was one of them.
And I did some research on that one. They started that season 2-7-2. 7 losses for those. That just to clarify for those, which you can't even say is comparable to the start that Charlotte has had. And then how many others did you say there were?
There were 4, if I remember correctly.
I feel like we've had this conversation before.
We did. That's why I'm bringing it back.
I don't remember. I don't think any of the others other than FCC.
Okay, so you've got Teitur Thordarson, who lasted less than a season with the Vancouver Whitecaps in their first season. He produced 1 win in 3 months. Vancouver then went on and had when did they next make the playoffs? Their first playoff appearance.
It's like mid 2000s. I mean, mid 2010s.
I want to say 2015.
That's what I was thinking too.
There it is. That's what I'm looking for. We're gonna have a lot of editing to do on this, but
27. It actually looks like 2017.
yeah.
They weren't even around in 2015.
So in 2010 they were D2 Pro. No, they made the wait, was that? Yeah, the playoffs. Okay, so the playoffs. They made it to they never made it past the first round until 2015.
Maybe I'm looking at an abbreviated list.
Yeah. So they didn't make it past. They made the playoffs twice after that, but never made it past until 2015, which is where they had a very, very good year. You had Thomas Rongen, who was there as a coach for Chivas in their first year. He lasted a year. Chivas doesn't exist anymore. You got Timo Likowski for the Columbus Crew. Was there for their first year. Kind of, obviously, we know that wasn't the best. Yeah, he lasted just a couple of months. Where so they made the playoffs, but everybody made the playoffs back then, right? So not something to look at there, but they didn't finish top 5 until 2001, so 5 years later. Then you had Bobby Houghton for Colorado Rapids in 1996, their first season. In which they didn't finish above 5th until 2002, 6 years later, where they finished 4th. Then you had Alan Cook for FC Cincinnati, who transitioned from USL to MLS and struggled, right? But we've seen how long it's taken FCC to be good. Let's also go back to Inter Miami as well. Inter Miami was one that we brought up where what's his face? Oh gosh, I can see his face.
Only you could see his name.
Diego Alonso. I wanted to say Diego Carlos, but that wasn't going to work. He lasted 1 year, and they still are garbage, right? And I mean, they've only been in the league for now 3 years, but 19th and 20th over the last 2 seasons, and they're just starting to get better. You are setting yourself up for failure by getting rid of somebody who's trying to implement an identity, because now you have to blow it all up, basically scrap the season, say, okay, we're basically folding, and having to build around a toxic player. If this is a player-driven thing, absolutely toxic, where people aren't going to want to play with him. You're looking at another 2-3 years before you're good. This is a terrible, terrible look for the Charlotte FC franchise, brand, front office. It just isn't a good look.
Yes, fully agree with you.
The other thing I wanted to talk about here is they've now gotten rid of him. What do you think their chances are that they can get into the playoffs now? Does this hurt them? Do they have enough time to turn it around?
I think this definitely hurts them. I don't think they make the playoffs. I think it was still going to be tough to make the playoffs even without the coaching change. However, I think this makes it much harder. I think, like you said, maybe at this point now you're looking at just trying again next season with a new coach, if that's the case, if that's the direction that Charlotte wants to go in. But now you kind of got to bring it. You got to go with a guy who's going to potentially implement the whole new system, and now you have to learn this whole new system that, again, you don't even know is going to work at the end of the day. So I think playoff wise, they just took a big hit on their chances of making it.
I think for me, it's less about this year and more about the long 5-year plan, right? You don't come in and be like, it's not like FIFA where you're like, okay, year by year, this is how I want to, I want to win this title, right? This is as much of a business as it is a game, right? So you have to figure out what your 5-year plan is, and your 5-year plan just got blown out the window because you decided to listen to one player who didn't like him when the majority of your locker room did, right? So now you've hurt the majority for the minority in a locker room that, especially in an expansion year, especially when it's your first year and you're trying to get things going in the right direction. This is such a terrible decision on all fronts. There's nothing that anybody can say that can make me think that this was a good idea. And I challenge you to play devil's advocate because I don't think it exists.
No, I'm not going to go. I agree with you. So I have no argument the other way. I can't see any situation in which someone thinks this is a good idea.
It's awful. It's awful, awful, awful. For my friends who are Charlotte FC fans that are listening, I am sorry that you have to go through this. This is something I did not expect your team to have to go through, but be strong and get through it and continue to support, right? You continue to support and hopefully they repay you and get you into the playoffs in your first year, which would be massive. But they had an identity. They had, they were getting much better at home, had to pick up the away form, but that's what happens when you're an expansion team. That's just life. No, it's just a terrible, terrible decision. But we move on. Let's talk about other terrible decisions. Moving out of MLS just to talk bad about them. We already slandered Zlatan for it. It's time to go put Ezequiel Barco in his place. To read the quote directly from Ezequiel Barco, I came to River Plate because I wanted to compete for real. In MLS, that was not going to happen. That is why it cost me so much to adapt, because of how Gallardo coaches. Coming to River demands a great deal from me day to day. The world that is River is difficult. At first, it costs a great deal because of the way they train, but you get used to it as it gets easier. MLS is not that demanding. This is why I left, because I really wanted to compete. Oh, goodness. I'm going to let you go first so I can gather my thoughts properly.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to say, obviously, off the bat, when your replacement comes in and is doing in one season what you couldn't do for multiple years, that's not a good look for you. Thiago Almada is obviously who I'm referring to here. He's come in and immediately hit the ground running and has performed well for the team. Something that took Barco, how many years? 3 years? Was it almost 4? I don't remember exactly. A long time, regardless. Barco finally found some form right before he left prior to this season. And even then, I think it still wasn't up to the level that people were expecting of him. This reminds me a lot of when Giovinco made comments after not being allowed to come back to MLS, where it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to come back to MLS because nobody wants to sign me on whatever ridiculous salary. So now I'm just going to go badmouth them. Except in this case, it's Barco couldn't be successful here in MLS. And now he's going to talk bad about MLS and say that it's not competitive and that they don't work hard. So I think it's kind of a cop-out as a way to try to maybe in his head justify why he couldn't be successful here. But I mean, we've seen from a number of people that you can go move to MLS, become successful, move on to Europe. I mean, someone did it on the exact same team. Miguel Almiron came in, he blew up with the team and he moved on to Europe. for a pretty good price. So you can't say that like MLS. I don't think it's fair to put the blame solely on MLS. Like, sure, I'm sure MLS maybe has a part to play in it, but I don't think it's fair to like point the blame entirely in that direction. Some of it has to be on yourself as well.
This is an immature kid trying to save face after being the face of this move. This move, he was at the time the most expensive signing in league history, if I remember correctly. He came here and he did nothing short of flop. Just gonna put it how it is. Outside of one season where you're right, he picked up a lot of really good form. He never broke 1,000 minutes, except for in 2018. But even then, never broke over 5 goals except for 2021. Never got more than 2 assists except for 2021. He had one good season, and he wants to call this, a bad league. It's a kid trying to save face because he's embarrassed that he went to a league that he thought was bad, performed like garbage, and now he's trying to talk all big and think he's all tough. This is what we keep talking about when we talk about signing these players and what their impact means. I don't understand why he's doing that outside of, because he could have easily gone and said, listen, it was a lot tougher than I had thought it was going to be for tons of other reasons, right? Living in America is not easy when you are a 19-year-old kid on your own. It's not. But I'm just looking straight numbers here, right? He scored in Atlanta a goal every 5 games. For River Plate right now, he's scoring a goal every 4 games. So he's going to a league, and it's a small sample size. I know, people. I know. But he's going to a league. And sorry, let me go back again. He's going to a league where he's claiming it's much more competitive. It's so much harder to be good. He's playing against teams that would get walked on if they came to MLS. Outside of like 4 teams in Argentina, everybody else is not heard of. And he's going to go and try and badmouth us because he played poorly and now he wants to save face. It's childish, it's immature, and it's sad.
Not to mention the fact that I'm not sure if you remember it, but he had the off the field controversy as well, where he like I think it was Brandon Vasquez, where he tried to like make advances on his girlfriend or something. So I mean, come on, if you're having off the field like controversial stuff like that leads to you getting benched, and you're gonna put all the blame on the coaching and the league for why you weren't successful, I just think that's foolish.
Well, and here's the other thing too. If this league wasn't good and didn't compete and didn't make you like work hard, shouldn't you have lit it up?
Yeah, exactly.
Shouldn't you have walked onto that field, scored 4 goals a game, and then moved and been like, yeah, that was really a bad idea? Because if that was the case, fine. Like when Zlatan says things like that, fine. Yeah, you lit it up. You did well. I don't need you to do it, but I also can't tell you that you weren't good. Barco comes out here, he scores 3 goals a season, except for 1 year. He's like, oh man, this league isn't good. I needed to go so I can really compete. Like if it doesn't look good on you, if you show up to a league you're supposed to kill, you flop, and then you blame other people and other things. So they didn't, basically what he's saying is, it didn't demand anything of me. I didn't have to go in and work hard. That's a you issue, bro. If you can't push yourself through the best you can every day, you're not a professional. Professionals know how to push themselves to the brink every single day, no matter who's around. That just means you are I gotta think of how to put this nicely. It just means you are a prima donna who has had all the hype in the world around him, had a big money move, and you think the world needs to bow down to your feet. You're not the next Messi, bro. You're not. You're not even next Angel Di Maria. You're the next Gonzalo Verón if you keep it up.
Yeah, I think just to kind of like summarize my thoughts on the whole thing, I feel like yes, MLS can be partially at blame here. I think there are a lot of factors making this switch to be very difficult. Like as you mentioned, moving to another country at 19 and living, most likely majority on your own. I certainly could never do that. I could never do that. It would be super difficult. I think that definitely plays a factor into his ability to adapt. But he's also not the first 19-year-old that's come over from a South American country to this league. And there have been other examples of people who have come over that were that young and have been much more successful. So I think some of it definitely comes down to the person. I think it's I feel like he should realize that some of his lack of success in this league has to come from how he handled himself and how he carried himself maybe within training and in games, and not so much just on the league not being competitive and the coaches not being good enough.
Yeah, again, I think it'd be really easy to go on and continue to just thrash him. Again, it's a childish look. It is. It makes him look immature. It makes him look like a kid who embarrassed himself because he flopped at a league that everybody thought was easy to walk through. And instead of being like some of the other professionals who have come in and said, man, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I had to work a lot harder to keep myself successful. He went in and said, oh, this place isn't good. It's, I don't have to work hard at all. And it doesn't push me to be better. So I had to go somewhere I could, compete and succeed, which was Argentina. When the whole goal, and I'm sure he told it to tons of people, was to leave Argentina so he can go to Europe. And what did he do? He ended up back at the place he was trying to leave. So good luck trying to get over to the spot where you really want to be, or you can continue just hanging out in Argentina, being in the same 14 tournament, and then losing to the Brazilian teams when it comes to Copa Libertadores. Like, have fun. Anyways, we can go more on that. Let us know your comments or your thoughts down below in the comments, or tweet us. Let us know what you think. You think he's right to say that? Do you think he's being a child? Do you think I'm right? Do you think we're right? I think we agree on this one, which is kind of weird. Let us know. Wait, what's our Twitter again?
At the DP Pod 1.
That's right. Go to the DP Pod 1. Follow us. While we're already in the topic of Argentina and Libertadores, why don't we go to the report that 2 MLS and 2 Liga MX clubs are going to be given invitations to the Copa Libertadores. The story is essentially that Liga MX doesn't want to go back in. So at some point they were invited and they left and they don't want to go back. So MLS could send 4 teams to the Copa Libertadores. I don't know how prominent it is, but things to think about. What would this mean, Mr. Wright, for a club to go over there and just compete? I'm not saying they win it. I'm not saying they do well. I'm not saying anything. Just to compete in something like this. What do you think?
I don't really know if it makes that much of a difference, to be honest with you, because I guess you got to think about what crowd you're trying to win over. I feel like the crowd that would have the most impact on the league, positive impact to win over, would be more so the Euro snobs rather than the fans in South America who I guess maybe view the league as like a middleman between South America and Europe at this point. But I kind of feel like it would be a similar situation to the Eurosnobs, where I guess if we go there and we don't perform well, it just tanks their view of our league even more. And I think it would be tough. I think it'd be tough to go down there and compete. Uh, However, obviously, like that's obviously the risk part of it. The reward is if you go down there and you play well. I think that starts to establish more of a name for our league. But the Eurosnobs aren't really going to follow how MLS teams are doing in the Libertadores. They're not going to really care. They're not even going to know. I highly doubt they even know MLS teams are potentially getting invited. So I think from an MLS stature perspective, it could have some benefits to it, but I still think there's a cap to how much it could benefit the league.
I would tend to argue your comment on they aren't the most important group to try and win over. I mean, if you look at any former MLS player in Argentina or any time an Argentinian does anything in MLS, they are consistently either bashing the league or making excuses as to why their player wasn't good there. If you can go and convince them that this league is a legit thing, it's a massive starting point. That being said, you have to start somewhere. The Eurosnobs are going to exist. The South American snobs, for lack of a better term, will always exist. But if you can start to win some of them over, again, a good result there is a very good thing for us. The other issues that have come up, travel, success, and desire, right? So would a club, if your club had the chance to go win Libertadores and it meant giving up an MLS Cup or a Supporter Shield or an Open Cup, would you do it?
I would do it for an Open Cup. I'd have to think about it a little bit more for an MLS Cup or a Supporter Shield.
I think it's something that we need to do. If we want to win over parts of the world that matter, I think it's something we need to do. I actually have my buddy, the one who I'm wearing this scarf for today, the Barcelona fan, will consistently make comments like, oh, it's just Champions League for CONCACAF. It's not like you're playing in Copa Libertadores. If you could go and play at El Paz in Ecuador, whatever it is, or Argentina, I don't actually know where the stadium is. I don't pay enough attention to it. Then I can give you some credit, but you would never be able to hack it in South America. There are people all over the world who think that we aren't good enough to do other things. And granted, we might not be able to because we've never tested ourselves there. But at the end of the day, I think we need to do it simply for the fact that we need to go and prove ourselves outside of Mexico, Canada, the United States, and then the Gold Cup. Consistently, there's this trend of people saying that there needs to be more quality outside of Brazil and Argentinian teams, right? The Venezuelan teams, the Ecuadorian teams, they are not hacking it with the River Plates, with the Palmeiras, with the Boca Juniors. They're not doing it. So they're looking for other teams to make it more competitive and more worthwhile, spread the tournament to other eyes. I think this is a really good chance to do it.
I don't see what this is really going to do for the league other than people being like, okay, MLS has improved. Like they can kind of hack it with the teams in South America, but I'm still not going to watch the league. I'm still not going to follow the league. I don't think us participating is necessarily going to bring in this like big wave of viewership and followers to the league. I think it just maybe, I guess, gains a bit more respect in the eyes of the South American fans.
Yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere if you're going to grow the brand, right? And it's all dependent on what our governing body or those above us, our masters or whatever you want to call them, what they want to do. If they see this as a really good opportunity to grow our league and the logistics work out where they can do it, sure. We got to remember, we also have Leagues Cup against League MX. That is now a thing that is running for however long, for whatever reason. It's a stupid idea, but that's happening. So again, you're looking at a Seattle Sounders team, for example, that's going to go deep CCL runs, play all their MLS Cup games, relatively deep US Open Cup runs. Then you got to go MLS playoffs, Leagues Cup if they're in it, and now you're going to throw Copa Libertadores on top of that. You're looking at 60, 70 games a year. That's absurd.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be able to do it. So you'd have to give something up. You'd have to concede something. The travel would be tough, right? You'd have to figure out a way to get your team down to South America and back to play a midweek game against Dallas in 100-degree heat. But here's the thing. I don't think the result there in the first couple of years matters. We need to go and we need to try and test ourselves against better teams, because we notice that there is a trend that is shifting between Liga MX and MLS, right? We're showing that we can compete with them, and eventually we will overtake them. So we will need to take a step forward somewhere. That step forward is Copa Libertadores. And again, you're right. If we go out and we win that tournament year one, does it change anything? No. Nobody's going to step up and be like, oh man, I can't wait to watch Seattle's. Nobody on the East Coast be like, man, I'm going to stay up till 10 o'clock every night watching the Seattle Sounders. No, that's not going to happen. But you have a chance to gain respect around the world. Players who are now playing against those teams are thinking, okay, maybe MLS is legit. Maybe I can make a move there and it's not the end of my career, right? The people who like Barco, who are bad-mouthing the league, are probably starting to set back into South Americans' minds like, oh, this is such a bad career move for me. If we can make that move and compete in that tournament and compete well, those $10, $11 million moves become commonplace, especially as we continue to input money into the league and allow people to make bigger transfers. You can make those signings, and it's less of a I need to go for the money and more of a I can use this to jumpstart my career. I think it's an important thing that if again, and this is a very, very broad, like may not ever happen type of it's from this thing called Golasso, which I've heard is a very non-reputable source. But if it's at all any bit true, I say we send it.
I still don't. I'm still not on board with it. I mean, Seattle lost basically the entire first quarter of the MLS season, battling it out in CCL, and are now finally able to focus just on the league and are starting to regain their league form. If you now tell them that they have to go to Argentina and Brazil and compete in Copa Libertadores, you're basically sacking an entire half of the season. Like they're going to probably have to tank another quarter of the league season because they're going to be focusing on the other tournament. I mean, I just looked up the schedule. They play in round of 16 in June and July, like late June, early July. So, I mean, that's like, you're still dead smack in the middle of the season. So you're kind of picking your battles there. Are you saying, like, for the fans at home for Seattle, hey, we're just going to tank games at home because we're going to focus on the games in Argentina and Brazil? I don't know if that's necessarily fair to their fans, the ones that actually show up to the games, just so that they can get some more reputation in Argentina and Brazil. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm on board with it, to be honest. I think not, and certainly not with the payroll restrictions that are in place right now. These teams aren't deep enough for this. I would be concerned with, like you said, how many games Seattle has to play. Because obviously, if they're going to this, they're not just going to erase the games that they have to play in the league. They're going to have to make them up at another point in time, in which case they're going to be like they're going to have double game weeks on double game weeks on double game weeks. So there's a lot of logistics to work out. And I just feel like at this moment, it would be, there's the risk that it would do more harm than good in my mind.
I think the right answer is to better the obviously things that we've talked about, right? Better your roster build, allow spending more freely, right? But the right answer is to make CONCACAF Champions League more respectable, or Leagues Cup more respectable, not travel to different continents to play in their tournaments, right? But at the end of the day, if we have the chance to do it, even just once or twice, if we can compete well, let's do it. Let's see what happens. You know, at the end of the day, if we don't do it, people are going to say, "Oh, I'll never respect you until you do it." Now we do it. It's either going to be, "Oh, wow, you guys played like crap. I told you so," or it's going to be, "Oh, you guys got lucky once. Do it every time like River Plate or Boca." It's going to be excuses no matter what. So let's just send it.
If it's going to be excuses no matter what, why are we going in the first place? We're just wasting time then, because they're not going to change their opinion on MLS at that point.
I think we've been doing this podcast too long, because at one point we were like, yeah, let's do it. Everybody's going to come onto our side. And now we're like, screw this. It already sucks. This is our league. Everybody go away.
If the timing was better, or if you found a way to make the schedule more feasible.
Ask me in 5 years when we have 12 DP slots.
I mean, but the issue is we're going to have 45 teams that they're going to have to play throughout the season. Not going to have any time for this. Super
teams, baby. Let's go.
Let's take the Super League. We're going to move it to North America and South America.
Let's take the Super League. You can move it somewhere else. All right. Let's finish this off really quick. And then we have to talk men's national team off camera. The starting lineup just got leaked for the match against Morocco tomorrow.
You just dropped the starting lineup for a match tomorrow?
Yeah. Univision or TDUN or TUDN just tweeted out the starting 11, and Greg Berhalter confirmed Matt Turner, Reggie Cannon, Walker Zimmerman, Aaron Long, Anthony Robinson, midfield 3 of Adams, Musa, Aronson, Weah, Ferreira, Pulisic. For a friendly. I'll send it to you. For a friendly.
He's trying to make the last tweaks before the World Cup.
Sure, I get it. But anyways, your Mets update. The Mets are playing against the Washington Nationals, and of course, Starling Marte with a homer in the first inning, because what's that? Oh yeah, we're elite. Thank you. Where's MLS Global?
I found the tweet.
I sent it to you.
Anyway, yes, MLS Globally.
MLS Globally. To quote the tweet from our good friend Will Forbes. Don Garber said that MLS would be a top 5 league in 2022 by 2015. I'm sorry, by 2022 in 2015. Do you agree that we are top 5 right now?
No, that's easy. We're not
even a little bit.
No.
Okay, let's go back then. We are not a top 5 league in the world right now. Where are we?
So I like to kind of look at the leagues around the world in like tiers. So obviously you have your top 5: England, Spain, Italy, Germany, France, top 5. I think the tier right below them, I would say personally, it's like Portugal, Netherlands, Belgium, maybe Russia and Turkey. Maybe Austria. Austria and Switzerland kind of in between. And I'm just looking at this from a European perspective right now. I know obviously like the South American leagues as well factor in here. And then I feel like the tier below that is where I feel like MLS gets a lot of comparisons usually. I would say like some of the more top tier second divisions, like the championship or like the Bundesliga 2. So I think that's typically where a lot of people compare MLS level, maybe even like throw the Scottish league in there as well. I think that's pretty fair. I would say, me personally, I think if we are in that group, I think we're on the upper end of it. Also more towards like the lower end of the tier above that. Maybe not necessarily as good as like the Austrian league per se, but maybe somewhat competitive with them. If you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said we were probably like a tier below where we are right now. But I think MLS teams could compete in the championship. I think they could compete with, I mean, we're starting to finally see now they can start to compete with teams in Mexico. I think they could compete with teams in the second Bundesliga, but I still think we're like a step below like the Russian, Turkish, Belgian leagues, because I still see that we are like sending our better players to those leagues at the moment, and that to me is an indication that the league is still a little bit behind there. So I think at least like comparing to European wise, that's kind of where I see MLS relatively.
A lot of so I'm looking at a lot of these articles that like, oh, let me rank the top 10 statistically, like based off of these statistics. And listen, I'm a nerd. I love a group of numbers just as much as the next guy. But if you're gonna have like these set criteria, that's how everybody needs to look at it. Clearly, they're not doing that. So I think this one, their criteria was like goal difference, top to bottom, how vast is the difference, parity, things like that. To me, when Don Garber said we were going to be a top 5 league in 2022 by 2015, he was indicating that we are going to be a top 5 destination. People are going to want to play here, and people are going to like make this a league that competes consistently with the biggest players in the world. That's what I have to assume that he meant by that. Now here's the deal. He didn't take the spending limit off. We just won our first Champions League. We're nowhere near a top 5 league. I like your tier idea. I like that a lot. I would have to say we're probably in the 10 to 15 range in terms of destination. Now that we've become a selling league instead of a retirement league, I think people are looking at it better. To break into that top 10, we need to be in your prime league. So MLS 5.0, when we get people in their prime, that's what it's got to be.
Let me get the Insignes like just a little bit earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If you can convince him to come earlier,
like if they got a Belotti, perfect example. That's MLS exactly. 5.0.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That's our next step, right? But we need to make that step. And in 2015, I think it was a good idea to say that by 2022 we'd do that. And we're getting there. It's just a little bit slower than we would expect.
I mean, in full fairness to him, since 2015, I think the league has really ramped up its progression. I think the league was moving super slow. If you look from like the end of the Beckham era up until like 2015, when like NYC was just joining, I think the league progress was moving super slow. If you were to rank it as a number, I think maybe generously it would be in like the 15 to 20 range, probably on the lower end of that.
Right.
But then within like that 2015 to now range,
the other thing that ties into this. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think someone froze and we overlapped. I was gonna say between that time period of 2015 to now, the league has really jumped up in progress. And like in the direction that it should be moving in. And that's why I was able to jump up in our minds, like essentially that next tier in terms of like how MLS ranks globally, I guess.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think the other thing that you need to tie into it is marketability is the phrase I'm going to use. When you think of the top leagues in the world, what's the first one you think of?
Prime.
Correct. Why? Because marketed like better than anything you could have imagined. One, because of the players that they can bring there, because all the money is in football. Two, because of how well it is perceived overseas, right? You get a bunch of people who took it on as a fad back in like 2004, and now they're all diehards. That is a really good way to get things going. So if you want it to be up there in terms of marketability, who do you need to market to, right? So who do you need to convince to be big fans of your league? And for the EPL, or the Premier League, for lack of a better term, it was overseas because they had everybody in the palm of their hands. It's like, how does the NFL grow their viewership? Go to London.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to Germany, right? MLS isn't at that point where they need to go overseas. They still need to win the homeland. And that is why we can never be considered a top 5 league until we win the homeland. You won't go to England ever and find one person. I'm sure you will, but it'd be a lot harder to find one person who's like, man, the Prem's garbage. I much prefer watching Italian league or Spanish league versus here. It's like, I'll never watch my local league. I'd rather watch something in a completely different country. You cannot be a top 5 league until you win the homeland.
Yep, fully agree. You're not going to get the respect of people out in other countries if you can't even win over the viewership in your own country, which is like, it's huge. Like the potential that you could win over in your own country in the US here would be massive. Like if you can garner, let's just say like same percentage, I guess, viewership or like following in the US here as they have in England, like with just people that live in England, we would have an absolutely massive league. Like so many people would be watching. So I think the potential is huge if you can win over the local demographic here for the US.
Cool. So yeah, I think it's just, you need to win over the homeland before you can ever be considered a top 5 league. Nobody in their right mind would be considered a top 5 league in the world without having the support of their own country. That's just silly. But that's it for us. We hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you're following us on all forms of social media so you know when we go live or post clips or anything like that. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Just search the Designated Players Podcast. We'll show up for you. Make sure you're following us wherever you get your podcasts so you know when our next episode goes live. And make sure you're interacting with us. We love interaction on the social medias. So hit us up. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.